In Argentina, several rallies and activities of reflection took place on the occasion of the National Day of Remembrance for Truth and Justice. The Russian State Duma agreed to initiate investigations on the creation of biological laboratories in the U.S. specialists in Ukraine. The death toll from twin terrorist attacks in central Somalia rose to 48. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Now we begin. In Argentina, several marches and activities of reflection took place in the occasion of the National Day of Remembrance for Truth and Justice. Different mobilizations took place in the Plaza de Mayo in the capital city of Buenos Aires and other parts of the country to commemorate this date. The purpose of the day is to promote the critical and collective analysis of the recent history of the country, 46 years after the coup d'etat that installed a military dictatorship in the nation that governed between 1976 and 1983. The National Day of Memory and Truth and Justice was established in 2002 as a tribute to the victims of the military regime. Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez offered a brief statement in the framework of the commemoration of the National Day of Remembrance for Truth and Justice.
I simply want to highlight who were the moral people who took power on March 24, 1976, and made 30,000 Argentine men and women disappear from the face of the earth, killed 1,000, imprisoned 1,000 more, and sent 1,000 more into exile, and we must never forget that.
Now we move on to Honduras. There, security forces arrested more than 100 women offenders in an operation to prevent gender-based violence. In response to women's protests against gender-based attacks, the public prosecutor's office carried out the Operation Deborah Says throughout the country with the cooperation of the Special Prosecutor's Office for Women. As a result, 135 men were captured and accused of different types of aggressions. During the operation, prosecutors carried out around more than 200 inspections to peace courts, police stations, hospitals, and health centers to confirm the treatment of victims of domestic violence, domestic abuse, or sexual crimes. President Xiomara Castro pledged to prevent and fight violence against women and girls in the Central American nation. On Thursday, Ecuador's National Assembly will hold the last debate on the Investment Attraction Bill promoted by President Guillermo Lasso. The proposal will be submitted to debate after the Economic Development Commission included a series of observations. However, political sectors openly rejected this proposal, saying that this law will not help the Ecuadorian people. At least 70 of the 137 possible votes are required for the bill to pass. Also, several social organizations, trade unions, and workers' leaders warned that they will wait outside the parliament for the outcome of the debate. In Peru, Prime Minister Aníbal Torres confirmed on Wednesday that they will go to international bodies to try to reverse the Constitutional Court's decision on the pardon granted to ex-president Alberto Fujimori. The Prime Minister indicated that the government will seek to protect the fundamental rights of all victims of human rights violations during the Fujimori government, while assuring that the actions of the executive will be in line with the constitutional framework. This pardon from Fujimori, initially approved in 2017, was revoked in 2018, after it was considered that the benefit was a result of negotiations between former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski and the son of Fujimori, who was a congressperson at the time. Alberto Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in prison in 2009 for crimes against humanity in the context of the massacres perpetrated in the Barrios Altos and La Cantuta between 1992 to 1999. In Uruguay, finished the campaign for the referendum on the Urgent Consideration Bill, the LUC, scheduled for next Sunday. The referendum will ponder the removal or acceptance of 135 articles of the 476 of the Urgent Consideration Bill. Among the most questioned points are the limitation of the right to strike, the extension of penalties to minors, and the permission granted to the police and military to search people and vehicles as part of routine procedures. National pollsters forecast there will be a narrow difference amongst the yes and the no options, as blank or undecided vote still prevails. In Chile, social and political movements demand justice for political prisoners and victims of police violence during the social unrest that occurred in 2019. The National Assembly of Relatives of Political Prisoners and Victims of Police Repression gathered on Thursday in Santiago to demand the approval of an amnesty law that allows the release of all those detained for exercising the right to protest. According to human rights organizations, in 2019, at least 20,000 people were arrested in an arbitrary manner, and some 2,200 were injured by police brutality. During the meeting of the victims' families, the senator and victim of police violence, Fabiola Campillay, reiterated her commitment to fight for the release of all the detainees.
We are not going to rest until the young people are released from the jails. And also, why not, send them a tremendous greeting, little ones. We are fighting the streets to get you out, and we are not going to give it up the fight. We are not going to give it up because you were brave. You went out to the streets to fight for what we should be given, to fight for justice, to fight for health care and education, and for many other things, for decent pensions. And today, unfortunately, they are being held hostage.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian State Duma agreed to initiate investigations on the creation of biological laboratories by U.S. specialists in Ukraine. The Duma President Vyacheslav Volodin pointed out that the commission will be headed by the Duma Vice President Irina Yarovaya and will be obliged to report on the creation of biolaboratories in Ukraine with the support of the Russian Senate. The parliamentary decision comes after Russia's special military operation in Ukraine revealed the existence of a military biological program funded by the United States Defense Department. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation uncovered a scheme for the movement of biomaterials from Ukrainian territory to abroad. Iran and Russia are studying a strategy of banking and financial cooperation to evade the coercive and unilateral measures imposed by the United States and the European Union. Iranian ambassador in Russia, Kazem Jalali, noted that the aim is to achieve recognition for the MIR payment system or Iran's territory, and stressed that the connection of the country's banks to the financial message transfer system, the SPFS, which is the Russian equivalent for the Society for Global Interbank and Financial Communications, SWIFT, will be studied. The diplomat stated that the cooperation with Kremlin authorities in efforts to strengthen these areas and carry out multiple activities in the future will be maintained. And Western powers agreed to coordinate efforts to deprive Russia of its resources through the imposition of extraterritorial coercive sanctions. The EU and the G7 agreed on Thursday on actions aimed at limiting Russia's ability to use its international gold reserves. In this same line, the White House issued a warning guide on likely sanctions to those who carried out transactions related to Russian gold. Russia has one of the largest gold reserves in the world, estimated at around 2,300 tons, with an approximate value of $140 billion US. Hence, this has been one of the sectors most targeted by the West since the beginning of Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine. The pressure action against the Kremlin follows the summits held by NATO, G7 and the European Union to analyze the situation in Ukraine. On Thursday, U.S. President Joe Biden backed Russia's exclusion from the G20 group of major economies, while suggesting that Ukraine could be invited to the group's upcoming events. In this way, the U.S. president doesn't contribute to the release of the tensions and continues with the policy of total encirclement to affect the Russian economy as much as possible.
We did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. My answer is yes. That depends on the G20. That was raised today. And I raised the possibility, if that can't be done, if Indonesia and others do not agree, then we should, in my view, ask to have both Ukraine be able to attend the meetings, as well as basically Ukraine being able to attend the G20 meeting and observe.
And as part of the explanations given by Shetinin about the current conflict and its main causes, he expressed different issues related to the actions of NATO, especially the non-compliance of agreements in relation to its expansion towards the east.
30 years ago, in 1991, the Soviet Union was dissolved. The Russia of that time opened its doors for a broad and multi-sectoral cooperation with Western countries, including NATO. We, in fact, hope for the formation of an indivisible and uniform European security. I am not lying, and there are documents on this, that NATO's military structure will not advance 1 centimeter to the east. But we were deceived. NATO has added 14 new countries, and its missile defense systems are already deployed on the territory of Poland and Romania. Without any sanction from the UN Security Council, the United States and NATO have carried out illegitimate military operations in 9 countries around the world, including Yugoslavia, Iraq, Libya, and Syria.
And in regards to find a solution to the conflict, the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry's Department for Latin America stated that there is a need to eliminate the bases that triggered this crisis.
The settlement of the Ukrainian crisis involves the need to eliminate the bases that triggered this crisis. And what cannot happen is the mass supply of weapons and the sending of mercenaries by Western countries to Ukraine. It is necessary to establish a balanced, effective, and stable structure of the European security through fair negotiations on the basis of mutual respect, on the basis of indivisible security, and not to add fuel to the fire.
And now we move on to other topics. Transportation workers presented on Thursday the minimum services that will operate on their second day of mobilization against the liberalization of public transport and demands over labor improvements. Friday's mobilization will have less impact than the previous one on February 18th, which paralyzed a big part of the transportation system. The new strike will cancel 2/3 of the bus and streetcar services and have little effect on metro and suburban trains, essential for a large part of the population living in Paris. Since the beginning of the year, unions scheduled several mobilizations to pressure the transportation administration managers in the ongoing negotiations concerning organization and schedule regulations that will come into force in January 2025, when several private companies will begin their operations. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. The death toll from twin attacks in central Somalia climbed to 48. According to the leader of the Hirshabelle state, the Al-Shabaab insurgents claimed that they were targeting politicians ahead of elections. The first attack in Hirshabelle's Beledweyne district was carried out by a suicide bomber and killed 2 local lawmakers, including Amina Mohamed Abdi and several of her guards, as she was campaigning for re-election. Then a car bomb exploded outside Beledweyne's main hospital, where the injured were taken for treatment, killing dozens, causing buildings to collapse and destroying several vehicles. Local authorities declared that the security of the electoral process will be reinforced.
God willing, we will not be disappointed. We will continue working on public service, whether it's about holding elections or other social development aspects. God willing, we rely on God and will do all what we can. We are urging to be very vigilant. We are ordering all security agencies to beef up security.
In a groundbreaking ruling, a court has ordered the South African government to reduce air pollution in a coal mining belt ranked by Greenpeace as the world's most polluting compound. Mpumalanga, which borders Mozambique, is the hub of South Africa's coal industry and boasts 12 coal-fired plants. According to global environmental group Greenpeace, the air in that region is the most polluted in the world, with record levels of nitrogen dioxide. Local environmental groups Groundwork and Vukani in 2019 held the South African government to court for violating the constitutional right of citizens to breathe clean air. The organizations said air pollution caused between 300 and 650 premature deaths in the region in 2016, and exposure to toxic materials emitted by those coal plants has resulted in an epidemic of asthma, bronchitis, and lung cancer.
So this is a groundbreaking decision that's been handed down by the Pretoria High Court. It revolves around the very unsafe levels of air pollution on the Mpumalanga Highveld, a region in the northern part of South Africa. And the court declared that the very high levels of air pollution on the Mpumalanga Highveld are a breach of residents' Section 24A right to an environment that is not harmful to the health and well-being. It is the first time in South African law, constitutional law specifically, that we've had an order from a high court of this nature. So it's a very big moment.
Now we move on to other topics. India sent the fifth consignment of 2,000 metric tons of wheat to Afghanistan out of the 50,000 to be donated as humanitarian aid to the South Asian nation. According to the Customs Commissioner, the initiative came from the Ministry of External Affairs to send the aid through the Attari-Wugah border. The aid will further strengthen the relationship between both countries. The first consignment reached Afghanistan through Pakistan on February 26. Meanwhile, the second convoy of humanitarian assistance arrived on March the 3rd. The fourth shipment was dispatched once again via the Attari-Wugah border on March 15th. And China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Kabul on Thursday, a week before Beijing hosts a meeting of Afghanistan's neighbors on how to assist the Taliban government. Even before the Taliban seized control of the country in August, Beijing had sought to maintain ties with the group as the United States-led foreign forces withdrew. However, like other countries, China has so far not officially recognized the Taliban government. Soon after his arrival, the Chinese diplomat met with his Taliban counterpart, Amir Khan Muttaqi. One arrived in Kabul from Islamabad, where he attended a two-day meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Since the exit of the former US-backed administration, Afghanistan has been further plunged into financial and humanitarian crisis. According to the United Nations and other aid agencies, more than half of the country's 38 million people are facing hunger as the winter drags on. And rescuers have been fighting the rain to clear landslide debris and waterlogging while expanding the search and rescue area at the site where the passenger plane with 132 people aboard crashed in South China's Guangxi Zhuan Autonomous Region on Monday afternoon. Waterlogging on the site made it quite difficult to walk on the muddy and slippery mountain slope soil. Rescuers had to lay bamboo frames on the ground to facilitate the rescue work. This Thursday, the first human remains were found under the debris. The first black box from the plane, which is believed to be the cockpit voice recorder, was recovered on Wednesday and sent immediately to Beijing for decoding. The rescuers used professional equipment to detect the underground area of the crash site in an attempt to find the second black box that recorded flight data from the Eastern Airlines crash plane. The search and rescue operations are carried out under the guidance of civil aviation experts. Now we address other topics. Many cities in China have boosted their scientific and precision antivirus measures in preventing and controlling the strong rebound of the COVID-19 pandemic, which spread rapidly in multiple regions across the country. Since the resurgence of the COVID-19, the Asian giant has invested in targeted and pragmatic efforts to contain the spread of the virus. In Beijing, which has reported a total of 75 local confirmed infections since March the 1st, all nursing homes for the elderly have adopted the closed-off management. In Shanghai, local authorities have started remodeling public places, including stadiums and exhibition centers, to use them as centralized quarantine sites for COVID-19 patients with mild symptoms and asymptomatic patients. In northeast China, Jilin province has built 13 temporary hospitals. On Wednesday, the country reported more than 2,000 new confirmed locally transmitted COVID-19 cases and 44 imported ones. So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.